US-Taiwan ties have entered a new chapter under the Biden administration, and with increasing aggression from China towards Taiwan. Will the US change its policy towards Taiwan? Well, to give us insight into US-Taiwan ties is our ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Hsiao Bi-khim. Ambassador Hsiao is Taiwan's first female ambassador to the United States. Before serving in this post, she also served Taiwan as a national security advisor, a four-term lawmaker, and a presidential advisor. Ambassador Hsiao, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to greet all of our listeners here. And the Taiwan-US relationship is a very important one, so I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share our views.
Well, thank you. And we noticed that there was a new development in US-Taiwan ties recently when the US State Department issued some new guidelines about how US and Taiwan officials can interact with each other. Now, I know these guidelines haven't been made public, but could you tell us some of the most significant changes?
Well, the guidelines had been under review for some time. There had been a lot of momentum from bipartisan members of Congress to review the need to support the breadth and the depth of our strong relationship that we have. And the State Department has recently finalized that review process. And this enables the representatives of Taiwan and the United States to engage at locations that were previously restricted in terms of access. It also broadens the opportunities and encourages, and I think it's important to emphasize the word encouragement because in the announcement, the State Department does seek to utilize the new guidelines as a foundation for encouraging broader engagement between the two sides. And that is not only here in Washington and Taipei, it is around the world. Our partnership is a very productive one. There are many opportunities to engage, to support each other, and we especially appreciate recent U.S. support for Taiwan's international participation.
Yeah, we see a lot of goodwill actually coming from the Biden administration. We noticed that he invited you to his inauguration, which is the first for a Taiwan ambassador since 1979. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that U.S. commitment to Taiwan is rock solid. So it's nice to see the reassurances that the Biden administration is giving Taiwan. Could you tell us what you see in the Biden administration's policy towards Taiwan and China so far?
Well, first on their policy towards Taiwan, they have emphasized Taiwan as a leader in democracy and also a very important security and economic partner. And the previous administration had described Taiwan as a force for good. If you bring the force for good, a leader in democracy, and a critical partner in security and economics, that does kind of characterize the broad relationship that we have. We appreciate the strong support, and the Biden administration has used the phrase rock solid in our relationship. And the continuity in support does reflect that it is rock solid in a bipartisan way as well. And we appreciate the many bipartisan members of Congress that are also playing an important role in this relationship. The Biden administration has on numerous occasions reassured their continuing support of Taiwan in our international space, in Taiwan's security, and also in many areas of our bilateral relationship, including education cooperation, science and technology cooperation, Coast Guard cooperation, and humanitarian rescues. There's so much in our relationship, and we do look forward to continuing the partnership. A lot of focus right now is on the economic recovery in light of the world dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So much cooperation is also expected in global health as well as in economic progress in both our countries, as well as partnerships around the world. In regards to their relationship with China, it's been characterized as a competitive one by many members of the administration. For Taiwan, China is a complicated relationship involving serious security threats, but also a complicated economic relationship and political history. And ultimately, Taiwan's goal is to sustain a strong democracy in our society so that the people of Taiwan have the right to determine their own future.
Yes, and we do see that, I would like to ask you actually about a question that many people in Taiwan are concerned about and around the world too, is the defense of Taiwan in face of a greater threat from China. China has had more military activity near Taiwan, and the U.S. actually has expressed concern about that. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has expressed concern over Chinese aggression near Taiwan. Also, he mentioned that it would be a serious mistake if anyone would unilaterally change the status quo. But when asked about what the U.S. would do if China attacked Taiwan, he usually declines to answer. Decides to keep the long-standing U.S. policy of being ambiguous about that very key scenario. And I am curious about your thoughts about U.S. strategy in that respect of being ambiguous about how they would respond to a Chinese attack on Taiwan. Do you think that the strategy is good for Taiwan? Is it beneficial in helping keep the peace around the Taiwan Strait?
Well, the threat against Taiwan's security comes at different levels and it comes in different forms. In addition to a broader invasion, we are currently facing coercion in gray zone areas. We're also facing cyber threats. We're also facing political interference. There are many different types of security situations. And although the U.S. Does not want to engage in public discussion on the various contingencies, we are in very close coordination in terms of dealing with the challenges in maintaining peace and stability in the region. And I think what is important is that we have a common interest in continuing that stability. We appreciate the multiple reassurances of U.S. support for Taiwan. We also appreciate that the U.S. engaged with their important ally in the region, Japan, on the senior level in a joint statement recognizing the importance of peace and stability in the region. And that is very much in line with our hopes and expectations in continuing to secure the stability of the Taiwan Strait. We also have to recognize that the threats and challenges are not only a matter of Taiwan's concern. We've seen increasing activities on part of China in the South China Sea that also poses challenges to the freedom of navigation and stability in the region as well. And so we hope that this is a matter deserving of continuing international attention. And we also want to call on the PRC to, instead of using military threats, to engage with us in terms of dialogue as a stakeholder in the region in our common interest of maintaining peace.
So do you think that China would be willing to engage in dialogue with Taiwan?
Well, this is something that we continue to urge them to do. It's also something that we believe is in line with international expectations as well.
So you had mentioned actually that U.S. President Joe Biden is working with allies such as Prime Minister Suga from Japan. We also saw at the G7 that they did mention the importance of peace, in the Taiwan Strait. How do you expect that the U.S. will continue to work with allies to help maintain peace in the region?
Well, peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait is certainly in the interest of all other stakeholders in the region as well as around the world. And Taiwan has played a very important role in the global supply chain. Taiwan is a peace-loving society with strengths demonstrated through our fight against COVID-19 pandemic. We're a force for good in the world, and we have much to contribute. And so we do believe that it is certainly a matter of global interest. It is also a matter of Chinese interest in ensuring that all stakeholders in the region can continue to develop in a peaceful environment.
I've seen some congressmen and experts raise the possibility of being more high profile about the U.S.'s commitment to defending Taiwan. There have been some acts in Congress, such as the Taiwan Defense Act, the Taiwan Invasion Prevention Act, which would call on the U.S. to defend Taiwan in the case of a Chinese attack. Do you think that the U.S. policy might change in that direction because of the growing threat from China?
Well, we very much appreciate the interest on part of many members of Congress in the defense and maintaining peace in the Taiwan Strait. And I believe that many of these initiatives do highlight the significance of the partnership that we have, and as well as highlighting the fact that the stability of the Taiwan Strait is in the interest of the United States as well as the broader Indo-Pacific region. We will continue to engage in these discussions, and certainly the U.S. Continuing commitment to Taiwan that is based on the Taiwan Relations Act, and that is a strong foundation in facilitating continuing dialogue in joint efforts in preserving the stability of the region.
And you had mentioned that Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the U.S. commitment to Taiwan is rock solid. So what do you think he means by that?
Well, I do believe that, and I said this on the day of President Biden's inauguration, we share interests and we share values. Our common values are freedom and democracy. Our interests are in the peace and stability of the region as well as economic prosperity. And that is certainly what binds our societies, our peoples, our governments together in joint efforts in advancing those values and interests. Taiwan stands on the front line in facing multiple challenges to our democratic system, and U.S. support for us is very important. I do believe that rock solid support involves support in many areas, and that is demonstrated in U.S. leadership in as you mentioned, the joint G7 statement, U.S. leadership in calling on the global community to support Taiwan's international participation, and also U.S. leadership in continuing freedom of navigation operations in the region as a strong deterrence against any consideration of unilateral military action that would upset the status quo.
Well, it's good to see that the U.S. is expressing its commitment to Taiwan as Taiwan faces many challenges. And you did mention that we are also growing closer economically. Taiwan is the U.S.'s ninth largest trading partner, and we are hoping for a bilateral free trade agreement with the U.S. How are talks on this agreement progressing?
Well, our economic ties are very strong. A few months ago, we initiated the Economic Prosperity Partnership Dialogue that highlighted many issues of common interest, including supply chain security, 5G security. It included women's economic empowerment, science and technology cooperation, and also investment screening mechanisms, etc. There are many issues of common interest. There's also an interest in working together to support investment and infrastructure development and markets in third countries, in other economies as well. So that partnership continues to grow. On the trade side, the United States for a long time has expected Taiwan to further demonstrate Taiwan's determination to synchronize our trade practices and standards in terms of market access. And President Tsai has taken steps to address those challenges and to demonstrate Taiwan's determination to meet global trading standards. And we hope that that will pave the way for further advancing our trade partnership. The current U.S. administration is currently reviewing its trade policy, and we've seen a number of public hearings, discussing a workers-centered trade policy. We do believe that deepening the trade relationship with Taiwan would advance workers' interests both in Taiwan and the United States. And our supply chains reinforce each other. Our economies are very much complementary and reinforcing. And engaging in trade discussions would further be a signal of confidence to the business communities in both our societies in terms of further deepening our trade partnership. We also have a common interest in diversifying our global trade so that we are not vulnerable to political coercion on our economic relations. And I think a lot of countries that are dealing with challenges of economic coercion also share that interest. And this is a very challenging area, but it's something that we do have to work on with other like-minded partners and market economies in a rules-based international system.
So it's great to see that US-Taiwan ties are growing on many economic fronts. Are you hopeful for a bilateral trade agreement to eventually happen with the United States?
Well, we are working on that goal eventually. The current administration has announced that they are not pursuing immediately trade deals, broader trade deals. However, we do want to work with our counterparts here in terms of laying the groundwork for advancing our trade relationship. Because we do believe that a strong trade partnership is good for both our economies. It will help to advance and produce progress in terms of the global economic recovery. And I think our friends on the U.S. side do also recognize the value of strong trade ties with the United States. And the value of that has also been highlighted on numerous occasions by our friends in the U.S. administration.
Well, Ambassador Hsiao, I also like to ask you about the lighter side of diplomacy. Taiwan sometimes uses humor to deal with its challenges with China and with the WHO. For example, last year when Taiwan was having tensions with the WHO director had accused Taiwan of some racist attacks, and then we responded with this hashtag. This attack comes from Taiwan, and there are pictures of beautiful beaches from Taiwan, delicious food, and President Tsai even tweeted a picture of her with her cats, and she had said that, we don't have a first lady or first gentleman in Taiwan, we have first cats. And recently this year, we had a hashtag Freedom Pineapple campaign when China decided to ban the import of Taiwanese pineapples, and I know that you were gifting a lot of people in town with dried pineapples from Taiwan, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had tweeted a picture of himself enjoying that snack, saying, as a proponent of freedom, enjoying some Taiwanese dried pineapple, checkmate. He was playing chess. So how would you describe the use of humor in Taiwan's soft power and diplomacy?
Well, I think Taiwan is one of the most open, diverse, and innovative, creative societies in East Asia, and our people are really taking advantage of that open freedom of speech, that space for innovation and being creative about having our voice heard in the international community and having Taiwan's presence felt in a positive and constructive way. And Taiwan does want to be supportive and playing a positive role in the international organizations and international society. We do want to utilize the many characteristics of our culture and our society in the process of securing greater support, whether it involves food, culture, pineapples, music, or sports. Last year we were there were a few months where Taiwan was the only country in the world playing baseball during the pandemic, and We do want to showcase the diversity, the openness of our society, and the many aspects of our culture and creativity as we express to the world our desire to be that force for good.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful way to display what Taiwan is all about. And one aspect of our society is gender equality. I know that you are the first female ambassador to the United States. We have a female president. 42% of our lawmakers are female. Um, what do you think about what it's like to be a female in politics? Are there any special challenges or advantages about being a woman in politics and in diplomacy?
Well, I think women in Taiwan have come a long way in terms of um, the fight for gender equality. When I was first elected in 2001 in the national legislature, we were just over 20% women. And now, as you said, we're 42%. So we have really come a long way. And I think there certainly have been many challenges, including traditional prejudices and expectations of the role of women that have kind of restricted public support and also sometimes even private family support for women's political participation. But I think we have had a lot of um, movers and shakers in terms of breaking that glass ceiling, and that has inspired many more women. I have personally been inspired in my own political career by women who came before me, who had a harder time than I did in breaking that glass ceiling and in overcoming public prejudices and expectations of the role of women. And so I think now that we have a more prominent role, not only in politics, but in business, in art, and in sports, in many areas of public life in Taiwan. I think we certainly want to highlight the fact that respect for diversity, the respect for gender equality, is something that also contributes to progress in our economy
Mm.
and in our politics in general. And I think this aspect is something that we also try to share with our other friends and partners around the world. And we're very proud of where we've come. I think there's still a lot we need to do in terms of continuing the advancement of gender equality, but we have to recognize that we have come a long way.
Well, I think it's women like you, too, that are very inspiring to women here in Taiwan. Is there anything that you would like to say to young people or women who want to be like you and to be able to contribute to Taiwan in a very special way?
Well, I do. I'm grateful that there are so many young people in our society who are committed to um, kind of the progress of our society. They're interested not only in their personal careers or their families, their relationships, but they're interested in Taiwan's progress, and that public commitment of our young generation, I think, is very important. And I think it's what drives our society. And so, to all the young people who continue to follow public policy, who follow public affairs, who are engaging in the public debates about Taiwan's international space, about the need to defend our democracy, about the need to overcome all of the challenges that we face internationally, but also in social movements, in advancing our social progress in so many areas. The environmental activists, the LGBTQ activists, the um, the all of the activists working for social progress and equality in our society have all contributed, and I really am proud of that momentum in our society, and I do hope that it will continue and that we all work to cherish the hard-won freedoms and the democracy that we have today, which is the institutions that has provided that space for all of us to be able to speak our own minds.
Well, Ambassador Hsiao, it's been wonderful being able to speak with you, and we thank you for the work that you're doing for Taiwan in the United States. And it's great to see that US-Taiwan ties are very strong and growing in many respects. So thank you so much for your time and continue the great work you're doing there.
Well, thank you. Stay safe and be healthy.
Thank you.